Welcome to Deep Dive. Today we're exploring an emotion that, well, it touches almost everyone, yet few truly grasp its intricate layers. We're talking about the fear of losing someone vital in your life. It's that persistent worry, that anxious tremor about maybe a partner leaving, or just the unsettling thought of navigating life without a significant person by your side. We're delving into some really fascinating insights that reveal how this profound fear can subtly, sometimes very overtly, reshape our self-esteem.
Right.
And influence the dynamics of our relationships, and even fundamentally alter the very way we express love.
It's truly fascinating, isn't it, how universal this feeling of potential loss can be, yet its effects are so deeply personal, so unique to each individual.
Exactly.
Our mission in this deep dive, really, is to unearth the underlying causes of this fear, to understand its varied manifestations, and I think most crucially, to chart a path towards moving beyond its grip, allowing for healthier, more fulfilling connections.
That sounds like a journey well worth embarking on. So let's unpack this together and discover what this deep dive illuminates about finding peace and maybe cultivating more resilient bonds. Okay, so to begin, we're talking about this deeply ingrained worry, right? This anxiety that someone central to our lives might abandon us. From a psychological standpoint, how do we define this fear? What exactly is it?
Well, this often falls under the umbrella of loss anxiety, or perhaps abandonment anxiety. It's essentially an intense emotional response that gets triggered. It activates when a significant person, could be a partner, a family member, even a close friend, seems distant or changes somehow.
Or even just imagining it.
Or even just when you imagine a future without them, yeah. It's more than just, sadness. It's an active, often sort of preemptive dread.
Okay. And is this fear always a direct response to a real external threat? Or can it often be something that originates more from within?
That's a really crucial distinction. It can be rational, absolutely. If there are genuine signs of risk in a relationship, maybe a partner is expressing doubts or there's consistent disengagement.
Right, tangible things.
Tangible things, exactly. But often it's profoundly irrational. And in those cases, it's born from these deep-seated internal insecurities, maybe unresolved past traumas, or even learned patterns from previous experiences.
Wow, okay.
It's like an internal alarm system that's just overly sensitive. It sounds off even when there's no real fire,
That makes a lot of sense. So if it's often this internal mechanism, how do people typically experience it or recognize this fear in their daily lives? What are some common manifestations?
Right. Well, you might find yourself, say, checking your phone constantly if a message isn't immediately answered. That sort of anxiety spike.
Oh, yeah.
Or experiencing really intense, maybe unexplained jealousy, even when there's no objective reason for it.
Right. Nothing actually happened, but the feeling's there.
Exactly. And a common sign is a relentless need for validation or reassurance from the other person, constantly asking, do you still love me? Or are we okay? That kind of thing. There's also a strong tendency towards what psychologists often call catastrophic thinking.
Okay, what's that involve?
It's where your mind constantly jumps to the absolute worst case scenario, like what if they meet someone better? Or what if they just get tired of me one day?
Oh, wow.
Or even, what if they wake up tomorrow and just decide I'm not enough?
That sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting, and this kind of thinking can make it incredibly difficult to just be present and genuinely enjoy your current relationship, because you're perpetually consumed by these hypothetical fears about the future.
Yeah, you're living in the what if. Okay, so if these fears often stem from within, let's explore that a bit more. Where exactly do these underlying reasons come from? Why do some people develop this intense fear of losing someone?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are indeed several significant factors at play here. One of the most impactful, I think, can be early attachment experiences.
Attachment, like childhood stuff.
Exactly. If you grew up with caregivers who were, say, inconsistent, maybe emotionally unavailable, or perhaps less affectionate than you needed, you might develop what's known as an anxious attachment style.
Okay, anxious attachment. What does that mean in practice?
Well, this style is characterized by a really deep-seated fear of abandonment and a constant, often unconscious need for reassurance that you won't be left alone. So in adult relationships, this might manifest as being hypervigilant to a partner's moods.
Like reading into everything.
Precisely. Interpreting small slights or shifts in tone as signs of impending departure, or even testing a partner's commitment, which sometimes inadvertently can actually push them away.
Wow. So it's really rooted in those foundational childhood experiences, shaping how we connect later in life. What other elements contribute to this fear?
Well, past experiences also play a massive role, a really big one.
Like relationships that ended badly.
Exactly. If you've gone through previous relationships where you were abandoned, perhaps betrayed, or experienced a significant, unexpected loss, those events leave deep emotional imprints. Scars, really.
Yeah.
And the brain, in its attempt to sort of protect itself from future pain, can become hypervigilant. It tries to anticipate that pain again, generating fear, even when there's no real immediate threat in your current connection.
So it's like your cast is trying to warn you.
Right.
But sometimes it overreacts.
It overreacts, precisely.
Yes.
It's a survival mechanism, essentially, but one that can become maladaptive. It doesn't always serve you well in healthy, safe relationships.
Okay.
And another powerful factor is idealization.
Idealization, putting someone on a pedestal.
Exactly that. When we place someone on a pedestal, seeing them not just as wonderful, but as truly irreplaceable, maybe even as the sole source of our happiness or our purpose,
Right.
we inadvertently give them immense power over our emotional well-being. So the fear of losing them then morphs into something much larger. It becomes the fear of losing our sense of identity, maybe our stability, or even our very purpose in life.
So it's not just about losing the person.
No.
It's about losing a vital piece of ourselves, or the version of ourselves we are with them.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it.
And I imagine low self-esteem plays a pretty significant role in this dynamic, too.
Oh, absolutely. Huge role. Thoughts like, I'm not good enough, or maybe if they leave, I'll never find someone like them who would accept me. Those are direct reflections of a weakened self-perception. Research consistently highlights that deep-seated insecurity and a lack of self-esteem are major contributors to this fear. When you don't feel inherently worthy of love or belonging, the idea of someone leaving feels like a confirmation of your deepest feels about yourself.
Right. It validates the negative self-talk.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where it gets incredibly insightful, I think. How does this pervasive fear actually manifest and, play out in our everyday lives? What are the practical implications for self-esteem, relationships, even our broader mental well-being?
Yeah, let's connect it to the bigger picture. This fear can insidiously erode our self-esteem in several ways. It can make us feel perpetually insecure, right? As if we're not quite enough for our partner, or that we constantly need to earn their love, keep proving ourselves.
Like walking on eggshells sometimes.
Exactly. And this often leads us to adapt and change who we are, trying to become what we think our partner wants or needs, rather than just embracing our authentic selves.
Right, losing yourself.
You lose yourself. And this pressure can lead to excessive dependency on the other person for our sense of worth. It fosters this profound lack of self-trust and contributes directly to deeper insecurity. You essentially abandon yourself in the effort not to be abandoned.
Wow. So in an attempt to hold on to someone else, we really risk losing ourselves in the process. How does this fear specifically impact the relationships themselves, the dynamic between people?
Well, it can profoundly disrupt the health of our connections. It often fuels intense jealousy, like we talked about, even when there's no real threat.
Yeah.
And it can foster a toxic need to control our partner's actions, maybe their time or their interactions with other people.
That sounds unhealthy.
It is. And there's frequently a lack of authenticity and honesty, because we might feel pressured to hide our true feelings or change our behaviors to meet perceived needs or just avoid conflict at all costs. This also makes it incredibly difficult to set healthy boundaries for ourselves or, importantly, to respect our partner's boundaries.
How so?
Well, you might find yourself ignoring your own needs, maybe tolerating unhealthy treatment or agreeing to things that aren't actually good for you, all out of that sheer terror of pushing them away.
That sounds like a recipe for a truly unbalanced and ultimately, unhealthy connection, driven more by anxiety than genuine affection.
Absolutely.
So how does it change the very nature of how we love? Does it warp the idea of love itself?
I think it can, tragically. It can transform love from, ideally, a free choice into a form of possession.
Possession. Interesting.
Yeah. Instead of allowing our partner their own space, their own freedom, their own individuality, we cling too tightly, driven by the fear of their absence. And this shifts the focus of love. There's a profound philosophical idea that true love is nothing else but the desire of being useful to another person.
Useful, not possessive.
Exactly. It implies love is about what we can give, contribute, and nurture in another's life, not what we can extract or control or hold on to out of our own fear. And another ancient philosopher wisely observed, love is not an emotion, it is a choice. True love, at its core, should be liberating and expansive, not terrifying or confining. It's about being secure enough to let go, knowing that if someone chooses to stay, it's a genuine choice, not some reluctant obligation driven by fear.
That's a really powerful distinction, cultivating an unconditional love and trust, rather than, clinging based on fear.
Does this fear spill over, though? Does it affect our decision-making and other aspects of life as well?
Oh, absolutely. It definitely can. This pervasive fear can significantly impair our ability to make healthy, balanced decisions, even beyond the direct relationship.
Like how?
Well, it can compel us to remain in toxic or unfulfilling relationships long past their expiration date, solely out of the sheer terror of being alone or enduring the pain of a breakup.
Right, staying for the wrong reasons.
Totally. Or, for example, you might decline a great job opportunity or avoid pursuing a personal passion if you perceive it might somehow upset your partner or increase the risk of them leaving. Wow, so it limits your whole life, potentially.
It can. These fear-driven decisions can have long-term, really detrimental consequences for our mental health, our personal growth, and just our overall well-being.
And speaking of mental health, what's the direct, sort of tangible impact of this fear on our psychological state?
Well, the continuous emotional vigilance and stress associated with this fear of losing a partner, it takes a heavy toll.
I bet.
Research consistently links this fear with a significantly higher risk of developing anxiety disorders, experiencing chronic stress, and even contributing to symptoms of depression.
Right.
It just creates this state of constant underlying tension that drains your emotional energy and affects your general well-being, makes it really difficult to find peace or truly relax.
Okay, this brings us to a really crucial point. If this fear isn't truly love, like you said, but something else entirely,
Yeah.
how do we begin the process of working through it? How can we fundamentally change our relationship with this fear?
Yeah, the million-dollar question, right? The absolutely vital first step, I believe, is deep self-exploration, really digging in.
Okay, what does that look like?
You need to start asking yourself some probing questions. What is the true story behind this fear for me? What exactly do I fear losing? Is it genuinely the person, or is it maybe what they represent to me?
Like security or identity?
Exactly. Their validation, maybe my own identity as their partner, or the security they seem to provide. Ask yourself, what personal needs, what gaps within myself am I unconsciously placing solely on this one person? And sometimes a powerful, although definitely challenging exercise is to truly imagine what life would be like without that person.
Oof, that sounds tough.
It is tough, but valuable. What activities would you still enjoy? How would you manage solitude? What strengths within yourself would you tap into? This can be a profound way to confront and begin to dissolve those underlying insecurities.
That sounds like a truly courageous and, powerful way to face it head on. Beyond that kind of deep dive, what else can help us move forward?
Strengthening your self-esteem is absolutely critical, foundational, really.
Building yourself up from within.
Precisely. You must learn to see and affirm your own inherent value and completeness, entirely independent of any relationship status. Remember this fundamental truth. Your life does not lose its meaning, its worth, or its potential if someone leaves. You are a complete, capable, and valuable individual entirely within yourself.
That's important to internalize.
It really is. And this isn't just a platitude, it's a truth to be practiced and internalized daily. Engage in activities that build your confidence, set and achieve personal goals, celebrate your unique qualities, really own your worth.
Okay. And communication, I imagine, is always a cornerstone of any healthy relationship. How did that factor in here with this specific fear?
Oh, hugely. Healthy, open, and vulnerable communication is crucial. Talking honestly with your partner about your feelings, your fears, and your needs, rather than letting them fester internally or worse, manifest as controlling behavior can alleviate a huge amount of insecurity.
So bringing it out into the open.
Exactly. A secure and authentic love is built on transparency, mutual trust, and the courage to share your vulnerabilities, knowing, or at least hoping, you'll be met with understanding.
But what if this fear feels truly overwhelming? Like it's significantly impacting daily life, despite trying these strategies. What then?
That brings up an incredibly important point. If the fear of loss is so overwhelming that it's severely impacting your daily functioning, your relationships, or your overall mental health, seeking professional help is not just valuable, it's often invaluable.
Talking to a therapist.
Yes. Mental health experts, like therapists specializing in attachment theory or maybe cognitive behavioral therapy, they can provide tailored strategies. They can help you uncover deeper patterns, maybe heal old wounds that might be fueling this fear, and develop practical techniques to manage these anxieties day to day.
Right. Tools to cope.
Exactly. Tools and understanding, they can guide you in cultivating an attitude of unconditional love, love that embraces freedom, and help you build unwavering trust in your own intrinsic capacity to handle loneliness or pain should it arise, because you can handle it.
So it's truly about cultivating that inner strength and security, understanding that our worth isn't tied to someone else's presence. It sounds like the ultimate goal isn't to stop loving, but rather to learn to love in a profoundly different, more liberating way.
Exactly. That's beautifully put. As one therapist articulated it really well, he said something like, "When I realized I was afraid of losing my partner, I initially thought that fear was a good thing because it meant I loved them a lot.
Yeah, that seems logical at first glance.
But then," he said, "I realized that fear is not an indication of love. I understood that the fear of losing my partner made me cling too much and be afraid to let them have their own space and freedom."
Ah, the clinging.
Right. And he further reflected on the profound shift this realization brought. He asked himself, if I discover I can be happy without her, why would I want to stay in the relationship for any reason other than genuine desire?
Wow.
If I truly lost my fear and then didn't want to stay in the relationship, that would be my truth, my reality. I don't want to stay in a relationship simply because of the fear of the pain that would occur if I left.
That's a truly powerful and, transformative thought.
Yeah.
It really underscores that authentic connection flourishes when it's chosen freely, completely unburdened by that fear-based clinging.
Indeed. True, resilient connection can only genuinely begin when you stop attempting to control and instead choose love, freely and without reservation. Because, as another wise sentiment perfectly captures, love without clinging, care without controlling, and live without depending. Because true love does not chain, it liberates.
If it's free.
It sets both you and the other person free to be yourselves authentically.
What a profound and insightful deep dive into an emotion that, it touches so many of us right at our core. It's clear that while the fear of loss is a common human experience, it absolutely does not have to define our relationships or dictate our happiness.
Absolutely. By understanding its deep-seated roots, recognizing its widespread impact, and actively taking steps to address it, like we've discussed, you can genuinely cultivate more authentic, more liberating, and ultimately far healthier connections in your life. And remember, your fundamental happiness and sense of worth do not, and really should not, depend solely on another person. Your completeness resides within you.
And that's something truly worth reflecting on and carrying forward. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to our next episode.